The Meeples and Miniatures podcast is sponsored by Two Fat Lardies, Geek Nation Tours, and the generous donations of you, the listener. Thank you to everyone for your continued support. We really appreciate it. The Meeples and Miniatures podcast, episode 235. Gaslands, with hosts Neil Shuck, Mike Hobbs and Mike Whittaker, and guest Mike Hutchinson. This show was recorded on the 15th of November 2017. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Meeples and Miniatures podcast. This time brought to you in super clear audio, we hope. We are trialling a new piece of software to record our shows, with many thanks to Jay Arnold for the recommendation and for Mr. Hobbs for being our guinea pig. Talking of which, hello to the Welsh wizard himself. How are you, sir?
Hello, Neil. Hello, Meeps. Hello, world. I'm very well, thank you, Neil. Thank you for asking.
Good to have you back on the show. And of course, we have our resident troubadour. He's lurking in the background, no doubt, with a tune and a cake.
Haven't managed to provide a tune for the set of lyrics that were foisted on me yet.
Yes.
Of which more later. And unfortunately, my wife seems to have absconded with the rest of the cake down to her clients at the dog track. And for those who saw the picture on Twitter, that's a crying shame.
I have cake. Just thought I'd drop that in there.
Yeah, I was made a very nice cake at the weekend. Unfortunately, I only had a couple of pieces and then had to leave it where it was. But hello, Colin. You may have noticed on Twitter at the weekend... Yeah, I had a celebrity engagement. Yeah, I got to open a shed. Everybody's really quiet.
Oh, we want to hear more about this shed opening. Tell us about the what was it called? The Peter Shed or something?
The Peakatorium. Right, okay. Yes, Colin Peak. Okay. Who happens to be a very good friend of somebody else we know from the show, Quentin from Stand 2 Games.
Aha.
Ah, yes. Colin has had a new outbuilding built, which doubles as an office, but also a gaming room. Colin is a long-time podcast listener. I can't remember whether it originally popped up as an email or whether we actually bumped into each other at a show. And you guys have met Colin because he's been on a couple of Market Lardens. So they may not ring a bell, but you have met him. Anyway.
Oh, I know.
So basically, Colin turned around and said, "Yeah, I'm building effectively a new games room. Do you want to come up and?" Because originally we were going to get together and play. Then he turned around and said, "I'm building a games room. Do you want to come up?" And then he had this stroking idea of, since he said I was some sort of Z-list celebrity, that I could open it for him. It seemed like a bit of a giggle. So I went up at the weekend and lo and behold, there was a ribbon, there was a plaque, and there was cake. Chocolate Guinness cake. That was nice. Oh, I'd say that was really nice. Thank you to Colin and Quentin and also Dave, another Dave, who I got to play on Saturday with. Yes, excellent time was had. We will be back in future. Colin is currently threatening for me to go up and have a Dark Age themed day. So watch this space.
As our local Z celebrity, Did you have fun with the cake?
No, it was a great day. It was a great day. More of which, I suppose, in our next section. But yes, I just want to say it was a most excellent cake, along with hot beef rolls and chocolate hobnobs.
Oh,
Here's a man who knows how to entertain.
he knows his audience, doesn't he?
Did you dunk them?
Actually, I believe I may. I may have actually dunked.
Oh, I say, nurse the screens.
I've just come over all unnecessary. Anyway.
Let's get back on our normal schedule, shall we?
Yeah, whatever that is. Yes, couple of shout outs to do before we crack on with the rest of the show. First off, those chaps from the Lardy Oddcast have been at it again. Not content with regaling us with one episode of a podcast, they have recorded a second one, and this is Two Fat Lardies on the road, recorded while they were on the way to Crisis. And they're talking about battlefield tours. And it is an excellent listen. I would highly recommend it. Really interesting podcast discussion about everything to do with touring battlefields, and an incredibly poignant last few minutes recorded at the Menin Gate. Brilliant stuff, guys. Well done. Really enjoyed it. Check it out. Lardy Oddcast.
Yeah, it is excellent. Very, very good. And I'm surprised they managed to get Roger Barrowcliff and his entire band into the back of the Lardmobile.
The sound quality is incredible.
Yeah, the sound quality for music is fantastic, yeah.
The TARDIS-like properties of the Lardmobile are actually well known if you've seen when Rich and Co. rock up to a Operation Market Larden.
Must be all the Larden there. It just makes it easier to get things in. They just slide in.
We're straying very close to the forbidden topic there.
In other news, and talking of our fantastic listeners, we have to do a big shout out to Mr. Per Bowden. So Per runs the Roller One blog and does some of the most fantastic 6mm.
Who clearly needs help.
Yeah. Per has written a little story. We will put a link to it in the show notes because I don't think we want to go into it here. But it is just fantastic. It's absolutely fantastic. He's got us all down to T. There's things in there that I don't even remember saying.
Scarily. Rather scarily, yes. This is when you realise that recording a podcast and going into people's ears every week or every couple of weeks or so, people remember things that we don't. And all of a sudden, all this at some point somebody comes back to haunt you.
But yeah, he's written a beautiful story about finding Guru Love. All hail him.
All hail indeed.
Speaking of finding Guru Love, where is Guru Love?
Where is Guru Love? There is the question. Some would say last he was heard from, he was still locked in the room. That somebody hadn't let him out.
Better let him out sometime, hadn't I?
But
oops.
Indeed. Guru Love is getting better. The poor lad has not been well. The actual problem he's had basically like a cough and a chest infection, and he's had it for like weeks, which kind of basically, which is really difficult if you want to talk to him. He's been constantly having coughing fits and various other bits and pieces. So hopefully he will be back and available sometime in the non too distant future. But no, the poor lad has not been well. Serves him right for going to Malaga. That's what I say.
It's all those strange ladies in Malaga, isn't it? But I'm sure he hasn't been, doing anything bad.
I'm shocked. Moving quickly on. Yes.
Yes.
Mr. Hobbs, you wanted to mention...
Yes. I've been following a Kickstarter, which is a non-wargaming Kickstarter, but it's one I think...
Shocking indeed. Sorry, a non-wargaming Kickstarter.
A non-wargaming Kickstarter, and it's one I just wanted to highlight. It's called Dig Hill 80. It's a group of archaeologists, and they're basically excavating a World War I battlefield in Brussels. It was discovered a few years ago, and the thing is, they're trying to raise the funds to do a full archaeological dig on this place before it gets ripped up for housing development. as you know, and they did a few test digs a couple of years back, and they found some amazingly preserved artifacts there. The tunnels are all still there; they've just been dug over and buried, and it looks like the tunnels were the trenches were actually buried before they were actually stripped out. So there's loads and loads of stuff there, and they're finding lots. So they're trying to raise 140,000 euros. They've raised 20,000 euros already. They got 31 days to go as time of recording, so probably about 15 days to go. But if you're interested in history, and especially World War I history, and you want to help people preserve what's underneath the ground there, I can recommend you go and have a look at it. They got pledges for a couple of euros. You can go to events where they'll be doing a presentation. You can actually pledge to go out there and do a dig with them. There's lots of people who are involved in publicising it. Robin Schaefer, who's an amazing German historian, is involved with it. Peter Doyle, Simon Verdigam. So, yeah, it is well worth having a look at. And if you can help them out, please do. So there we go.
Link in the show notes. Okay. And on that note, we'll take a quick break. And when we come back, we'll catch up with what we've been up to for the last couple of weeks.
I don't like it, Sergeant.
Me neither, sir.
Good Lord, it's really looking pretty bad.
Yes, sir. It happens every time, sir. It's too predictable, sir.
How far do you think we've advanced, Sergeant?
6 inches, sir. It's always 6 inches. We advance 6 inches, then Jerry gets a go. The lads are calling it Hi-Go, You-Go, sir.
Hi-Go, You-Go? Good grief.
And they don't like it, sir.
Oh. Not like it? Seems pretty straightforward to me. Rather like cricket. We have an innings, then the other chap does.
Well, that's all very well, sir, cricket, sir, but begging your pardon, it ain't like that, sir, in war. I don't think Mr. Hitler plays like that.
What, Hitler? No, gosh, he'd like to go all the time.
Oh, Lord, sir, lummy. Whew. Well, sir, anyway, sir, it's like this, sir. If it carries on like this, Hi-Go, You-Go, me and the lads won't be coming to your Thursday evening games club, and that's the way it is, sir.
Looking for more of a challenge with your World War II games? Are you tired of the predictability of Hi-Go, You-Go systems? Iron Bean Shopman provides real command challenges on an unpredictable battlefield. Two fat lardies, playing the period and not the rules since 2002. Pip pip.
What have we been playing? What have we been buying? We might even have painted something. The Meeples and Miniatures crew reveal all. So here we are, and it's that time of the show where we catch up with everything we've been up to for the last couple of weeks. Mr. Whittaker.
That will be me.
Ah, good. You spotted that.
Yeah,
I'm
quite smart like that, really. You know, sometimes I do notice these things. So me, what have I been up to? Well, let's see. Monday night at the club. What have we had recently? We've had... Where are we this week? What is the meaning of life? What am I doing? Oh, yes, we had another in the round of the Border Readers campaign using Open Combat, which was, as ever, cracking good fun, because it's a crackingly fun system. And I lost, but hey, doesn't matter, because it was fun. We've had the Club WAB 1.5 tournament. Yes, you heard that right. We had a WAB 1.5 day using James Morris's absolutely fabulous Age of Arthur rules, run by my good friend Andy Hawes, with a little help from the rest of the club. We had 16 people turn up. There was prizes generously donated by the lovely chaps from Futsal, of which I was lucky enough to walk up with one, namely the General Most in Need of a New Tactical Manual. Yes, I came last. I got tabled pretty much 3 times. And I don't care, because I had a good time, because the folks who tend to turn up for the kind of stuff that Andy runs tend not to be win-at-all-cost tournament WAB players, which is the thing that puts me off WAB. And my wife baked a cake, which was rather spectacular. See link on my Twitter if you haven't seen it yet, and you will see what I mean. Neil, it's in the chat.
It is a fine cake, I've got to say. It's a fort. You could use that as a piece of terrain. And it would be even better by using this terrain is you could show battle damage as it progresses.
You could lay siege to it and get to eat it. Yeah. Exactly.
I want one.
No, you just...
You got to admit, it's a bit good, isn't it?
What are they, matchmakers?
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
Amazon do matchmakers in you can buy 10 boxes of matchmakers for £10 from Amazon.
So, pardon? What now? Hang on, what?
You could buy 10 boxes of Cool Mint matchmakers from Amazon for £10.
I'll be back in a minute. Just carry on the podcast.
That cake has about 5 boxes worth of matchmakers making the Palisade walls.
I think I shall have to do an extra experimentation using Cadbury's fingers.
No, you'd need to make. Problem is, you'd be winding it with a fort that's nearly 54 mil at that point.
And
yeah, I'm not really seeing the problem here. But basically, it's about a 3-inch deep chocolate cake with matchmakers around the outsides and more odds and sods on top, and some very nice green icing, and it really is a very nice cake.
Creative Mott and Bailey Castle, here we come.
You don't get that in the Great British Bake Off. No,
you don't. Although I suspect you might. Other than that, I've...
Put me to a wargaming table near you sometime soon.
There's not a hell of a lot of it left.
I'm just going to make another one.
well, it got fairly impressively demolished on Sunday. Some of the leftovers went to Wargaming Club on Monday and took it to work on Tuesday. And I think the leftovers may have gone to the Greyhound track with her tonight, because I can't find any in the house, which is a shame because I'm hungry. Other than that, I may have wound up Mr. Bond in a way he completely failed to notice till Hobbsy pointed it out to him.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Hobbsy. That was good. That's about it, I think. We've been busy stripping down the workshop and putting a decent floor in it so that wargaming things can happen with it, which did result in the rather interesting side effect of not only finding some parch marks on the floor, which suggests that part of our outbuilding was used as a bakery, which we sort of knew, but Tim, our builder, found a live rifle bullet.
Oh, right, okay.
Buried about, what they've done, as far as I can tell, is at some point what was a 1800s outbuilding had a concrete floor laid on top of the packed earth at the bottom, and somewhere in that process what looks to be a 303 rifle bullet got buried.
That's a story and a half behind.
Yeah, I'm assuming that the concrete floor probably dates from the 70s, which is when our place was in use making Hammond organ speakers, of all things. And I think that's the point at which that outbuilding may have been turned into a workshop and had its floor redone. And since that's clearly... It's a rifle bullet. It's not medieval, nor is it 1800s. That was kind of an interesting... I wandered in tonight and Tim said, "Look what I found!"
Oh, right, okay.
Oh, fine, okay. Just be careful with that, will you?
Yes.
Probably give us the police.
Bought anything?
Sorry, bought anything? I may have pledged for the PSC Kickstarter, for the French for the Great War. Mm-hmm. We should note, given that we were a little scathing about some aspects of the last PSC Kickstarter, that a mail has come round from PSC suggesting that PSC have now found someone to run their Kickstarters for them.
Yes, we shall. Well, it'll be worth. Well, see what happens. And I mean, to be fair, I thought they did a good job on the Great War and the tank expansion,
yes.
Even when things kind of went wrong. I mean, okay. Some people didn't like the miniatures, and the bayonets on the the British troops were a little brittle if you clip them incorrectly. But
Yes.
let's face it, at the end of the day, it was like, it wasn't the end of the world. And they were really nice miniatures.
And if you go for the veteran pledge with the Great War French expansion, you can have some more.
Yeah, except for the fact
of slightly better print quality.
Well, yeah, that is my only caveat. I'm thinking I thought the hard plastic miniatures that they did for the Great War were really nice. So my only issue I potentially have is that, okay, well, if they've gone for a softer plastic, is that going to affect the quality? I mean, the renders look fine. But no, don't show me a render. Show me the finished product.
The real thing. That's not an unusual problem with figure-based Kickstarters, is it?
Indeed. I mean, interestingly, from my previous chats with Will, I know their original plan was to have the French expansion out for Essen this year. So obviously, the production issues they had with the Battle of Britain has impacted their release schedule. Interesting looking Kickstarter.
So yeah, pledge for that. Had I pledged for Seventh Continent last time we talked?
Yes, you had.
Okay, that's fine then. And I shifted my copy of Blood Rage.
Oh, you did? Excellent stuff.
Which I'm quite happy with. Bought me some new toys. And I've just packed off a bunch of Foundry Napoleonics to Tom down our club, who is tipping his feet into the waters of commissioned painting, mostly inspired by the Lardy's Sharp Practice video on Beasts of War, which reminded me just what a freaking awesome game it is.
It sure is.
It most certainly is. So that, I think, is pretty much me.
Mr. Hobbs.
Mr. Shock.
What have you been up to?
Not a huge amount, if I'm being honest. My painting of the hordes of Rohan is carrying on. My horses are all done. So 50 horses have been painted. I'm just on the first 12 of the riders.
You're an inspiration. You're an inspiration to me.
Thank you, mate. That's what I like to hear. Actually, horses are really easy, to be honest with you. Yeah, the riders are taking... I've only done 12. I'm about halfway through the first 12. So I'll crack on with those. I've been playing a few games. I went up to parts of Wales, which I haven't been to for a long time, and I met up with old friend Steve. Hi, Steve! Because Steve hasn't been very well recently, and he hasn't been able to get out on games, so I thought, well, let's go and see him. So I went up there, and we played Arkham Horror. And I just love it. It was just a great game. We just sat around his kitchen table, playing games and having a laugh. Very good stuff. What else have I been doing? I've been carrying on the Seventh Continent, but that's about it. I haven't had a chance to actually get out and play many games recently because of other stuff. Bought anything? Oh, I've had a Kickstarter turn up.
I was going to say, please divulge that huge mound of boxes that appeared on Twitter the other day.
Yeah, it was a huge amount of boxes with very little in them. To be honest with you, Neil.
Yeah, who are you? Look, come on, Hobbs. Who are you trying to kid? Come on, talk.
The boxes contained the Conan book of set. So the biggest box in there contained a sort of 100-page A4 hardback book, which was wrapped in cardboard, wrapped in bubble wrap, and then wrapped in that really, really thick bubbly wrap in a box. So a little bit excessive on the packing, but it definitely wasn't damaged.
And there wasn't anything else in that box.
No, just one book of set. That was it. Because that's all I got from that.
I mean, what's this? You don't get that's a huge. Oh my word.
Yeah.
Okay.
I also bought some Battle Lore expansions because
that's an interesting one, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, you pointed me in the fact that Fantasy Flight Games are selling off Battle Lore, part of their Christmas sale, and everything was out of stock. And I just thought, I wonder whether they're going to discontinue this. So I thought I'll just get the handful of expansions I haven't got. So I got the last of the Undead expansion, and I got Great Dragon and the Giant. What else did I get? Oh, I bought some of the Foundry 2000 AD figures.
Crikey, are they still around?
Yeah, for another day. So by the time you hear this, they're gone. So I just picked up a couple. I just got I got Robo Hunter and Hoagie and a couple of Robusters and Nemesis and Torquemada. And I got Wolf's Hammer to go with my Johnny Alpha. So, yeah, I got those. And the only thing I've pledged for, because I've dropped my Joan of Arc pledge. I saw sense in the end. I have pledged for the PSC French, so I've just gone for the basic French expansion for that.
Mm-hmm.
I was going to do the veteran one, but I just thought, well, I don't think I need the figures. I've got the figures, so I've just gone for the French. The only other thing I've been doing is I've been sorting out my lead pile. I've had a sort out. I emptied my cupboard. I filled up the spare bed to about a 2-foot depth of stuff.
Did you find anything you've forgotten you had?
No, actually, no. I sort of knew it was all in there, but I've had a good sort out, and some stuff's gone up into the attic. I built some shelves up in the attic. It was odd. I was sort of packing up these shelves, and I'm working out that most of the stuff I got up in the attic is empty boxes, because I don't like throwing out game boxes, even though they're empty. I don't know whether you get me.
I'm with you on that one, definitely.
Yeah. So, I got like the Rune Wars box, which is empty, is up there, and all my Heroes of Normandy boxes, and all the empty boxes from Command and Colours, Napoleonics, and Ancients. There's just piles and piles of empty boxes, and I just sat there thinking, I could just chuck these, but they're too nice.
Yeah, but the G&T boxes are so good value. Are so good quality, aren't they?
Yeah,
these guys know how to make a game box.
Oh, they do. It's a damn fine game box, and that's about it, really. That's all I've done. Very boring couple of weeks.
Right. Okay. Well.
Oh God, your turn. You're going to talk about the 40-odd games you've been playing now, aren't you?
No, it's not. It's not that bad. It's not that bad. Painting. A little bit. I made a bit of progress on my second Test of Honor set of figures. Not too much, but I'm kind of getting there slowly. And if you are a Patreon backer, you would actually seen physical evidence of that. As one thing I've been toying with at the moment is I've been doing a couple of vlogs for Patreon backers, because we did a few Patreon only podcasts, but haven't done that many. And I was thinking, are the things I can do for our Patreon backers? And since I've just got a new phone with a very nice couple of cameras on them, I've decided to have a play around and doing some video logs. So there is actual video evidence of my very messy painting table. But there we go. So that's what I've painted. What I've played. Let's have a quick look. We've had 3 games of Dungeon Saga. I've had 4 games of Lord of the Rings card game. Nice to get that back out to the table. Been too long since we played that. That's been really cool. Had a game of Mansions of Madness, 2nd edition. Yeah, we rock up at a churchyard. And investigating strange goings on at a churchyard. Nothing bad's going to happen there, is it? I mean, especially when no monsters turn up, but keep finding all these weapons. This doesn't look good. Okay, but again, another cracking scenario for Mansions of Madness. Really enjoying that game. 2 things played that I haven't played before. Okay, so. First off, following on from what I was talking about the grand opening of the Picatorium, I had a couple of games of Zombicide, specifically Zombicide Black Plague. Now, I had been wondering, Zombicide has been one of these Kickstarter phenomenon. If only I could say it. Kickstarter phenomenons. It has always done incredibly well. And it's been one of these games that has had loads of stretch goals and extras and what have you. I think it was one of the first ones to really go to town on that, and then other companies have used that as an example for what they do as far as their Kickstarters are concerned. And I did kind of wonder, because there's been something like 5 different games for Zombicide now. 5. I know they had Season 1, Season 2, Season 3. They had Black Plague, and there's been a Green Horde, I think it is, or something. Anyway, but I did kind of wonder, okay, what was all the fuss about? And got to play it on Saturday.
And?
That was a dramatic pause.
How dramatic is this pause?
On a scale of 1 to Halo. It's about
I don't know.
2 of a Halo, I think.
Not sure.
Very unsure. I mean, miniatures are very nice. Some of the hero miniatures are really nice. Game components are perfectly fine. The gameplay was okay, but I suppose one of the especially in the light of what has happened recently, if you play a game, does the first thing that says, I haven't got this, I need to own a copy of this game. It's that blood rage moment. It's that Godfather moment. When you're halfway through the game, and suddenly you realise that you need to purchase it. I didn't have that at all with Zombicide. It was like it's fine, it's perfectly fine. But would I actually go out on the evidence of what I've played so far and buy a copy? Don't think I would. Again, whether or not it's simply a case of it's a miniatures board game, but it's this thing of, well, okay, if it scratches an itch, but have you got games that do it better? So, at the moment, I'm kind of thinking it's fine. It's perfectly fine. Would I buy a copy? Probably not.
Having played Last Night on Earth and owning Dead of Winter, I think you'd probably have to twist my arm really quite hard to buy yet another zombie game.
Yeah. No,
and Last Night on Earth is quite elegantly simple and appealing, and Dead of Winter has some brilliant depth to it. It's like, it's how many dungeon crawls do you need?
Yes, quite. Jury's out on Zombicide Black Plague. It's perfectly fine. And if someone turned around and said, "Would you play it again?" Yes, I'd play it again. But would I buy a copy? No, probably not. And finally, Mr. Hitman has bought a number of games recently, and he's bought a number of Euro games recently, one of which is something called Terraforming Mars, which is riding quite high in the Board Game Geek ratings. And fun enough, it's a game about terraforming Mars. And
copy sitting
that's
right
a
above my
cracking
head.
game. It's a resource management game. The idea is you're attempting to put surface water, raise the temperature, and raise the oxygen content of the atmosphere to a point where the planet is happy to gain victory points and whatever while doing so. And it's a really cracking game. Very impressed by it. Terraforming Mars, well worth a look. So that's what I've been playing.
So with Terraforming Mars, is it a collaborative game, or are you all trying to terraform your own bits?
No, it's a competitive game. No, you're each playing a different corporation. Mm-hmm. In the base game, everybody has the same corporation that just gives you a basic set of money to start, and they're called projects, but it's basically things you can do. So, for example, you can, once you have sufficient surface water, you can build a dam to make a power station, which increases your corporation's energy generating capacity. And there are, there are literally hundreds of these cards that you can play. They all cost money and potential, and have restrictions on. You can only play this when the oxygen content is at X%, or there is so much surface water available, or the temperature is at this point. Now, basically, there's a whole load of stuff you can do, which then gives you resources that you can spend on things later. It's I think the series like building resource engines, with the whole idea of, as I say, you're attempting to terraform the planet to make it habitable. It takes a few turns to get your head around and get into. And what I was saying about starting corporations, there's like the beginning corporations where everybody is the same, and then there's a whole bunch of corporations that you can get randomly dealt, which vary the game, and so each of them has particular specialities and has bonuses, and also has potentially disadvantages as well. So big amount of replayability. There's a couple of expansions out for it.
It's been very hard to come by for a while.
Yeah,
it was massively out of print. I basically nabbed my copy over the summer when I think it was one of my favourite online board game dealers, it might be actually been Amazon in this case, had a copy installed. I know I have no time to play this at the moment, but I might not get another chance to pick it up, and it is on my to play with the Posh Games guys over Christmas list.
Well, it'd be interesting to know what you think. Well, we were massively impressed with it.
I've heard many good things about it.
We were massively impressed.
So yes, it was nabbed because it would get played.
Sounds like a similar sort of idea to PC games like the Anno series or Settlers. It's that sort of thing, isn't it? Where
it was described to me by Mr. Halford as Mule. It's a bit like Mule.
Oh dear Lord, that's going back a ways.
Yeah. But he said that's what it struck me as. Funnily enough, it was the game that the other game that Mr. Hickman bought the last time we were down at Firestorm.
Oh, right. There you go.
Yes, that was. But no, interesting, very good game indeed. Right, so that's basically what I've been playing. Have I bought anything? A couple of little bits. I bought three expansions for Lord of the Rings card game, because I was missing 3 from a particular expansion cycle, and it was beginning to bug me.
So, is this 3 on top of the 17 you bought last week?
No. What 17 I bought last week? I haven't bought 17 at all.
13.
I was saying I had 17 left to get. I now have 14 left to get. Yes, I now have 14 left to get. Okay.
I do apologise.
And then that's all right. And then answers on a postcard to when I'm going to buy them. Yeah. And then I bought a couple of thousand card sleeves, and I bought about 15 deck boxes because I decided to sleeve them all and then sort out a storage solution for them all, so I can cart them around all nice and tidily, etc. And that is about it. Back to a couple of Kickstarters. Back the French Army for the Great War, and by the time you listen to this, the other Kickstarter I backed will have finished, which it was Full Moon Jacket, which is a game. It's a werewolf game based in Vietnam. Have either you two guys ever seen the film Dog Soldiers?
Should have been able to see that one coming from the title.
Well, yeah, quite. Yeah. I mean, as I say, have you ever seen Dog Soldiers? Yeah. It's basically dog soldiers in Vietnam. Now, interestingly, because I looked at it and went, okay, how many times will I? I mean, I'm a Vietnam fan, and I like the premise of the game, and I wanted to support. It's a guy's first game, and I wanted to support him. But I was looking at it, kind of thinking, would I ever justify spending, especially with the fact that it was like £65 for the full game. And then there's, I think there's a bundle of add-ons which add on to about another like £80 because there's a whole load of expansions for it. And I'm kind of thinking, it's this discussion we've had with Joan of Arc. Could I actually get it to the table to justify that? That spend, that outlay of money.
I did very, very nearly succumb at the end of the Kickstarter.
What, Joan of Arc?
I have to admit. But I did realise, yes, I then realised I was only doing it for the shiny, which would sit on the shelf for however long and then get sold.
Yeah.
So I decided not to bother.
I teetered. In the end, I left myself with $1 because I want the dragon. But there was some seriously nice shiny stuff at the end. Anyway, but interestingly, what this guy has done is that he, as well as doing the full box game, he's also offering a print and play version. Not only that you have print and play for all the game component, for all the paper card components, but also he's offering the STL files for the miniatures. And I thought that's really that's a really interesting thing for somebody who wants to produce a game, especially if people haven't played the game. And what he's basically turning around and saying is that, okay, if you order the main game, you will get the print and play version anyway, and you'll get it in December. But you can just order the print and play version. So, for, I think it's £15-20 as opposed to £65, you can get a version of the game. Okay, it'll be print and play, so you have to print it out yourself and what have you, and laminate it or do what you need to do. But you can get the game. You can get the game a month after pledging for it, and it's playable. I just thought that was a really interesting idea.
Yeah. First time I've seen somebody offering their sales as part of a game package.
That was the other thing. It's like, and they're offering STLs for all the miniatures that are in the game. It's like, that is really interesting. Yeah. So.
Yeah, that is nice.
I just thought it was an interesting concept. So whilst I didn't know whether I could justify the full game, get it to the table enough, I could certainly justify getting the print and play version and giving it a look and giving it a play and seeing what I think. So there we go. So that's what I bought this month. That's me. Right. So on that note, it'll be time for our feature interview, and I think I shall let our resident troubadour introduce him, because he's an acquaintance of yours, is he not, sir?
He is. He's a former colleague at the BBC and Love Film. He's a co-founder, co-member certainly of the Broadcast Centre Carcassonne Mafia, for want of a better term, and he is now about. That
sounds like there's a story involved in that.
A published Osprey Blue Book Wargames rule author with a rather fun set of rules for vehicular combat called Gaslands. It's a certain Mr. Mike Hutchinson.
Indeed. So we shall take a quick break. And when we come back, we shall be chatting about the imminent to be released at time of recording game Gaslands,
and probably imminent to be released at time of publish as well.
Indeed,
assuming you can get your act together.
Always that.
It depends whether you get invited to open up a new wargaming establishment or those 36 games.
Yeah, well, mine's not opening until
you
January.
might want to book him in early, Mike. You know what he's like.
Yeah, I might get the offer of a better shed.
Yeah.
The nation is vast. There are battlefields of old, great convention halls, and worlds of fantasy to explore. Who will guide us across this great geek nation?
Since 2010, Geek Nation Tours have been providing holidays for groups of like-minded people. Whatever your nature of geek, tabletop gaming, TV, film, comic books, sports or science, Geek Nation Tours caters for you. Visit www.geeknationtours.com for more details and join the great Geek Nation. Have you ever wondered what's going on in wargaming? We do too. So come with us as we go behind the hobby with the Meeples and Miniatures interview. We'd like to welcome to the Meeples and Miniatures podcast, it's Mr. Mike Hutchinson, author of the forthcoming Gaslands rules from Osprey Publishing. Good evening, Mike.
Hello there.
How you doing?
Very good. Extremely excited to chat to you guys.
Yeah, no, it's great to have you on. Now, a point of order, as listeners will know, especially when you're now talking to a guest called Mike, we have a slight abundance of Mikes. In that fact, there is now 3 of us, so this could get confusing. So we will be referring to Mr. Hutchinson as Gaslands Mike for the rest of the interview, just so we all know who we're talking to. Okay? Hope you follow that. Cool. Right. Anyway, Mike, fantastic to have you on the show. Thank you very much for coming on. Before we start to talk about all this new set of rules that you've produced, since you're a new guest on the show, the first thing we'd like to do is to get to know you a little bit by finding out a bit of your gaming background. How did you get into wargaming and perhaps board gaming, and what sort of thing have you been up to? So, can you give us an introduction into your gaming history?
Yeah, sure. So I am looking at a very battered copy of Hero Quest on my shelf. I think that's where it started. I've still got the same set I had when I was 11, with some abominably painted orcs and skeletons. I guess, like most people, got in through Games Workshop in the early 90s. When Necromunda came out, that was sort of in my pocket money price range for the number of models. So I played a lot of Necromunda and Gorka Morka and Blood Bowl and all the smaller games. Even back then, my friends and I used to buy the White Dwarfs, and there would be so many games like Man of War and Space Fleet and all these different things that we couldn't afford to buy, that we would just read the pretty detailed summaries of how the games worked and like the battle reports and stuff, and then just make up games that seemed sort of familiar, like sort of similar enough. So I have a folder full of game designs from when I was 15, 16, which are all like versions of Epic or Space Fleet, which are just the best that we could approximate them with bits of squared paper. So that's kind of where my gaming heritage lies. And then, as lots of people do, I sort of drifted away from the hobby when I was trying to find girls, and then I got married and got back into the hobby.
It's a very familiar story, is it not?
Tale as old as time, yeah. Fell back into board games heavily, and then when I moved down to Canterbury, I was looking for a new gaming group, and just kind of fell back into Warhammer, and threw that into the plethora of miniature games that there are available now. Got super into Malifaux for a while, which I thought was a really interesting kind of new kind of game, lots of new fresh ideas, and then kind of got sucked into the Osprey Wargame series, just a bunch of interesting games out there to play at the moment. So I'm back in the hobby for about, I guess, 8-10 years now. So
when you're not writing rules, what's your current game of choice?
Right now, I am playing the Conan board game whenever anyone comes over. I'm playing a bit of X-Wing because there's a guy down the road who's got a couple of young boys, and he's trying to get his lads into X-Wing, but he has to let them win all the time. So I'm the one person that he can have a square match against. And I've just picked up and painted the new Shadespire game from GW because I'm interested to see what they're doing with their kind of collectible format of games.
I'm kind of intrigued by that one. That does look interesting.
But actually, I'm a new father, so actually a lot of my gaming is solo at the moment. So I've kind of fallen heavy into the Fantasy Flight stuff that you can play solo, like Arkham Horror, the card game. I'm absolutely besotted with at the moment.
Oh, hello. Here we go. This is a good conversation, Neil. We've been trying to talk Neil into buying this for the last couple of weeks.
Oh, yeah.
So, Mike, tell him why you should buy it.
So I've got a pile of Mythos collectible card game cards from I guess from the mid-90s here, and I for a long time was trying to write myself a beautiful solo card game which would allow me to really like get stuck into that Lovecraftian storytelling, which just doesn't ever really work in the Lovecraftian board games that you get. I've played Arkham Horror. I don't know if you've played the board game of that. It's just the worst. Like in the middle of a game, it just says like you remembered something you'd previously forgotten. Lose one sanity. Like what the hell was that? Like I left the gas on. Was
that when you say Arkham Horror? Was that the one on the really big board?
Yeah, the one that takes like 17 hours to play.
That's one. Yeah. Been there, done that. Yeah.
But the card game is really different. It's just like the way that the story unfolds and the way the game is trying to play against you. I just find really exciting and interesting, and lots of the stories that it kind of that emerge from it feel really natural. I've just got the most recent expansion, the Carcosa one, and you get a gravedigger in it, and you know he's got a lantern and a shovel, and it just fits really nicely together. It just, for me, it's just a really awesome like storytelling game. It's blended that RPG together with the Lord of the Rings. We're well off topic here, but the Lord of the Rings card game has got similar like crunchy mechanics, but it's a little bit more thinky and less story driven.
Yeah, I really like the Lord of the Rings game. That's one of my favourites. Yeah.
Yeah, so I find it similar, but just a little bit more story flavorful.
Ooh.
Anyway.
That's good. So I know we are miles off topic at this point, but since you're trying to sell me a game and you're a Lovecraft fan and you're looking for a solo game, can I just happen to point you in the direction of Mansions of Madness, 2nd edition?
Oh yeah. I have the 1st edition sitting on my shelf. I've not wandered into the 2nd edition yet. You reckon it's good solo?
Well, yeah, because the 2nd edition plays with an app. So the game is completely app-driven. So all the events and everything that all the mythos phase and all that sort of stuff is all driven by an app. So events are happening and stuff is going on, and it's things like, for example, you want to open a door and the door appears to be stuck. Okay, so take an attribute test. And then key in your number of successes. It doesn't tell you how many successes you need. You just need to key the number of successes. But it's just, again, a superb storytelling experience. But with the fact that everybody's in the same boat because nobody knows what's going on, especially the first time you play a scenario. And again, I mean, we've played scenarios multiple times, and it changes various things. And then, obviously, in the background, events are moving on. There were, basically, it's a case of if you get to a certain place by a certain time, you'll prevent something happening. Otherwise, you have to deal with the consequences. And of course, that's all tracked by the app. In the meantime, the player's just wandering around, kind of going, right, okay, what do we need to do? Right, we think we've got to go here. We think we've got to go there. Picking up clues. It's like Cluedo on crack. It is the best Arkham game I've played so far. I haven't played the Arkham card game, but it's by far the best Arkham game I've played so far. So I see the Arkham Horror card game, and I raise you Mansions of Madness, and at that point we can actually get back onto topic.
So on the topic of steering it slightly back round, on the topic of solo Lovecraftian gaming, I've got a massive black box of Cthulhu Wars sitting on my shelf here, which I haven't been able to play multiplayer, and I was so frustrated about not being able to play it multiplayer that I wrote a solo version of it, which you can find on Board Game Geek, which is basically turns it into Pandemic, except you're dashing around trying to close gates and kill cultists before they can raise the big bad.
Oh right, so you basically wrote Pandemic Reign of Terror before Pandemic Reign of Terror came out.
Yeah, you can do a date check on that. I'll tell you what's fun about the Arkham Horror one is that when the game came out, it was just a core set and it only had these 3 scenarios in. So I got stuck in over Christmas just writing some custom scenarios for the game, one of which was set on a train, which seemed like an obvious thing to do with a Lovecraftian story. And the second pack that came out for the game was set exactly on a train and had the same location mechanic. And I was like, check the date, it's fine. I completely didn't get it, didn't rip it off.
Cthulhu Wars, that's the one with the incredibly massive plastic monsters, isn't it?
Yeah, you get some kind of kilo weight of plastic in there. They're really, really nice. The sculpts are all really super good. The plastic's a little soft, but they're really cool to look at and to paint.
Yeah, I think I saw someone had some glow in the dark ones. I seem to remember at the tabletop sale. And, anyway, we digress. Shock and indeed horror for this podcast, but there we go. Indeed not.
Never happens. Never happens.
Gaslands and Mike, we found out a little bit about your gaming history. So how did you get... well, obviously, I mean, it seems that you've had a history of rules writing from the fact of, from your mid-teens writing extra bit of rules, so you could play stuff without having to buy or having to go into 3 mortgages to buy Games Workshop stuff. So how on earth did that become something a little bit more commercial?
So I just got in the habit of writing almost a game a month, just for my own amusement. And most of them were rubbish, and I would play them a couple times and then set them aside. But I started getting really into the idea of having a fantasy mass battle system, because me and my friends were playing big 8-player games of Warhammer every weekend, and I was slowly becoming more and more frustrated with how tedious that rule system was in its final incarnation. So I was messing around with a fantasy battle system, and I was pretty pleased with it. And so I started shopping it around. I just thought, well, I would love to get something published. I wonder how you do this. I just started emailing like a synopsis and a chapter listing to some people. Had some rejections, had some ignores. Actually had a little bit of interest from the Gripping Beast guys. I went and demoed it with them. They didn't end up picking it up, but I got a very polite rejection from the lovely Phil at Osprey Games, and we got to chatting over email. I directed him my website where some kind of prototype manuscripts for some other games that I'd written, just sort of seeing if there was anything he was interested in. And he immediately got back to me and said, "Ooh, there's this car combat thing called Gaslands that's on your website. That's something I've been thinking about doing because there isn't one of those around. I'm thinking of toy cars. I'm thinking how awesome that would be." And yeah, it was as simple as that. I went to see them. We chatted about what we wanted the game to be, and we were really clear about what was going to be cool about the game. We were really together on what it should be. So yeah, and that was it. He knew it would be one of the Osprey Wargame series, the Blue Books, so that made it easy because I knew exactly what format it was going to be in. I was familiar with the layout. I had a pretty strict word count, and that gave me lots of reasons to just get started and get stuck in. So that's how it went down. Okay,
so why car combat? Where's the inspiration from that come from?
Well, the honest answer is my friend John, who had the lovely idea. We've been playing lots of X-Wing at Darksphere Games in London. We got in the habit of playing it once a week. And after one of those, he was like, "Oh, you know what? There isn't a really good car combat game that's as fun and as simple as X-Wing. Maybe that's, I'd love to see something like that." So I thought, oh, that's a pretty good idea. I haven't written a game this month. I'll just knock something off. And I wrote a couple of pages of notes, sent him a few texts. We knocked around some ideas. At one point, we thought that every car should have like a Skeletor damage thing where you had to rotate the top of the car, and that would show how many. That was a terrible idea. But anyway, so the short answer is my friend John came up with the idea, and I ripped him off and sold it to Osprey.
I hope you're buying him a pint.
Yeah. He's got an apology, thank you, in the cover sleeve. Yeah.
I have to say, I'm still slightly boggled, particularly given how long we've known each other at this. I haven't written a game yet this month because you kept that quiet when we were colleagues.
Yeah, I suppose I started it in about 4 years ago. So what's that, like 2003? So, yeah.
Yep. 2013. We're not that far
numbers.
back in the past.
I have a very young daughter as my first, and I'm numbers and mental arithmetic were the first thing to abandon me when the sleep disappeared.
You have our commiserations. Yeah, been there, done that.
But the writing a game a month thing is liberating. If you want to get anything creative done, you have to create loads of rubbish for every good thing that you create, is my experience. And so you just got to get through all the bad stuff as fast as possible, and writing a game a month was my way of just like
It's that saying of if you want to be a writer,
write.
Yeah,
or writing is rewriting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. So, other than the fact that they're turning around and saying, okay, well, so there hasn't been a car game around for a while, because, I mean, as I say, we're talking I think most of us remember games like, you mentioned Gorka Morka, which I really liked. I must admit, I really liked, but it just didn't seem to have any legs. And then obviously we go back to things like Steve Jackson's Car Wars and was it Dark Future?
Did any of you guys play Car Wars?
Long time ago.
Yeah.
on a living room carpet in Raleigh in about 1990.
Didn't it used to have something?
Had the set.
The cars were really tiny, weren't they? If I remember rightly.
Well, tiny.
Yeah, but didn't they actually produce some metal models for it? But they were really, really small scale. They were like 10mm scale or something.
Don't remember that. Was that another game?
So it was definitely a car battle game. But it may not have been Car Wars. It may have been I don't know, because as I say, wasn't there one like Battle Cars or something? Anyway, there's been a couple, but as you say, there hasn't been one produced for quite some time. And of course, with the popularity of things like, I suppose, Mad Max, and then you've got things like Death Race, which I suppose, depending on how old you are, is either David Carradine or the Staith. Because I must admit, that was the one that was the thing that immediately sprung to mind as I was reading that. I mean, I know you've got your own background into it, but as soon as I was reading it, I was reminded of the recent remake of Death Race.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think like the recent Mad Max and Death Race is definitely 1/3 of the feel of the game, and then another big chunk of it is the 80s movies that I absolutely loved, like The Running Man and like Convoy, and obviously the original Mad Max movies, Escape from New York, that kind of like that post-apocalyptic or dystopian 80s sort of TV grind that's so awesome.
So basically, everybody, we know where we are. Okay, we know what sort of universe we're operating in. You had some ideas. So, what was the pitch?
Well, the pitch was pretty simple. It was cars with flamethrowers pulling donuts in the wasteland. That was how it started, which was exactly, I think, what Phil was thinking of. And the Osprey games, they tend to try and be a little bit, I don't want to say generic, but like of a genre. They want to give you flexibility to play the kind of game that you want within that genre. So they're not too like specific on the details. The background isn't too fleshed out, so you can't just play the kind of game that you want in the kind of background that you want. So that was definitely part of it. Was like, I want some of my own background here, and I want a little bit of like the Gaslands world to shine through. Hopefully it does in some of the flavor text and some of the like sponsors and the skills and stuff. But equally, it's an Osprey war game, so it needs to have a level of flexibility for people to play the kind of background or scenario or movie that they want to play it in. So the pitch was pretty easy. It was basically Hot Wheels cars, kick them around the garden, stick some guns on them, go.
Just a quick question. The pictures of all the vehicles in there, are these all yours?
Yeah, these are my minis converted up, painted and photographed by my own fine self. I had to learn a little bit about that. I was a bit worried about how they were going to turn out because I don't know anything about that. But yeah, so those are all my miniatures. So one of the things about Gaslands that I've learned whilst I've been playtesting it is that you can buy Hot Wheels cars for £1.10 or something, and they'll sell them in Morrison's or Sainsbury's. So when you're doing your weekly shop, some of them will fall into your shopping trolley, and once you've got a couple, then suddenly you have like 100 in a box, and you don't know where they came from because you're like, oh, this one's great. No, I'm going to do a whole team of Batmobiles. No, wait, this boat. What am I going to do with this? So yeah, it's cheap to get into, but it's cheap to begin with.
It's habit forming, is that what you're telling us?
Yeah, I may have accidentally invented like a CCG miniatures game where you just got to seek out the rarest Hot Wheels car. But I think maybe the Hot Wheels guys invented that, but whatever.
Cool. As I'm looking through this, okay, I mean, you mentioned X-Wing. I'm looking at part of it and thinking Formula Day springs to mind a little bit as a board game. So I think what we should do is let's open the book and take a closer look into how the game actually works. So first off, what do you need other than the rules? What do you need to play?
Pretty much, you just need some toy cars, some movement templates, which are all available to photocopy out the back of the book or download from the Gaslands.com website. You can just print those out, stick them onto cereal box cardboard, and away you go. Or we sell some very nice Perspex ones on the Gaslands website.
Perspex ones. Ooh.
It was important to have shinies available on launch date. Always important to have shinies. So the other thing you need is some 6-sided dice, and those 6-sided dice can be used to, they're used for combat, but they also can be used to represent these things called skid dice, which are much nicer if you purchase our custom
I was about to say, do you have custom skid dice? Oh, indeed you do, yes.
Of course, yeah. So these skid dice are one of the key features of the game, which manage the kind of the gear shifting and the cinematic skidding and sort of the physics engine, if you like, behind the game. So these skid dice are 3 sides with a shift icon on it, one side with a spin icon on it, one with a slide icon, and another with this hazard triangle. That's basically the only totally bad news side of the dice. And you can, like in playtesting, we just got some blank dice and drew on the faces, or you can use a D6, or you can buy our very reasonably priced packs of shift dice, which also come with a fast play dice game that you can play in the pub with them.
Oh, while I'm at it, I'll design another game this month.
Exactly, yeah, exactly. So that's what you need. And in terms of table size, it's pretty flexible. We tend to play on a 4x4, but 3x3 works just fine. We've demoed it on 6x4s and 8x4s. It's pretty flexible. It doesn't need a massive table, and just really depends how many players you've got. And that's the other thing. It's not a 2-player game. We've happily played up to 8 people on a single table with Gaslands, which is one of my favorite features of the game.
All right, so it really is kind of multiplayer mayhem sort of game.
Yeah, if you want to play it that way, it certainly is. I mean, if you want to go head-to-head, playing one of the race scenarios, just you and one other player, then it can be quite tactical and intense. But you know, the way that it kind of plays out most often is that there's chaos and carnage, and you know, multiple players kind of works out for that quite nicely.
Okay, cool. Okay, so you had a few cars fall into your supermarket trolley on your way around the local, on the way around your local superstore of choice. Do you need to kind of then convert them and put weapons on them or anything, or can you just kind of assume that they have weapons mounted?
Yeah, I mean, the game doesn't suggest that you've got to convert them up, and certainly I'm not of the school where you ought to model absolutely everything as it's on there, but that's up to players. We've had playtesters play with toy cars that they just got out of the packet, and people who've gone seriously to town, smashing things up, taking pieces apart, like dremeling chassis into half, putting tank tracks on, fixing all kinds of wire on the inside of the windows to make it look properly post-apocalyptic. That's obviously what I would recommend, but you don't need to. The only real recommendation I have would be super glue the axles so they don't roll around during play.
Yes, make sure that as a car they don't have working wheels. Alternatively, I suppose you could put them on a base.
You could put them on a base.
Controversial subject on this podcast, I know, but
there's advice for if you want to base them what the sizes should be, but toy cars tend to have a pretty regular footprint, so it rarely matters.
That way lies heresy.
Wait, what have I wandered into?
I think it sounds perfectly reasonable.
There was a great debate on a past episode on the ethics or otherwise of basing 15mm vehicles.
But tanks have a really regular footprint as well. What's your problem? Move on.
Go here.
Oh, we can be one of those interviews.
Well, Mike, it's great to talk to you. What's the phrase? Moving swiftly on. Nothing to see. Move along. Right, okay.
So does this game come with a setting then, or is it a sort of a abstract pick what you like and just do what you like kind of game?
No, it comes with a setting. Our timeline diverges at 1976 when I imagine the first Mars manned landing occurs, as I suppose everybody hoped at the time it might. Mars gets a kind of a colony, a settlement begins to establish, initially scientific and military, and then over time it's got the mineral wealth and the sort of space to expand so that it becomes a fully fledged sort of civilization of its own. And in 91, in our timeline, Mars attempts to secede from Earth, and a protracted sort of battle for whether or not that is legal or not culminates in 1999 with a Martian attack, a nuclear attack on Earth, which basically cripples Earth's infrastructure, leaving her a sort of bombed out shell, as you might imagine. And then you fast forward 20 years to what is 2018 is the present day, where I mean, maybe Mike will sort of understand this, but I imagine that the Facebooks and the Amazons and the Apples of this world are based in Mars. That's where all of their corporate headquarters are, and it's very easy for them to make decisions about the resources and people of Earth when they're that far away. So they make incredibly wise fiscal and business decisions, but on Earth, the people are essentially wage slaves to Martian-run industry on Earth. And the internet's been destroyed, but television remains, mostly under the control of the network, which is a nest of Martian collaborators and people in it for the gain. And the chief anchorman and sort of main producer of that is David Logan, who is responsible for inventing a whole host of death sports and violent entertainments to keep the masses entertained and in check. And the most successful one of that is the Gaslands Death Race, which is in its 10th season as the game puts itself. And in the 10th anniversary is offering a phenomenal prize to the winning team, where they're all going to get shipped to the Elysium of Mars to live out their days in prosperity and comfort. So that's what's at stake for the racing teams of the shell of Earth.
Cool. So, which leaves you the opportunity, of course, for at some point in the future, in the same setting, a rollerball clone. Or...
Yes, one of the funnest things that we did during the playtesting actually is I don't really know I knew that the background was going to be the Running Man or something similar, but my friends and I ran a short role playing campaign which sort of acted as a world building thing. So we actually kind of got out of the cars and role played a bunch of different scenarios where we sort of explored the world from that point of view, and that really helped put some flesh on the bones for what this place looked like and felt like. Maybe that project will turn into something at some point. Here's hoping.
So we've sort of chatted about the ideas behind the games, but what about the actual mechanics of the game? I mean, do you want to run us through how a turn works? I'm kind of guessing that each player would have one or two vehicles to sort of play around with.
Yeah, sure. So just to get set up for a standard sized game, you're going to get 50 cans of gasoline, which are the currency. 50 cans is going to buy you 2 cars if they're totally tricked out, maybe 5 cars if you're running more ramshackle stuff. If you're going all bikes, maybe you'll get 8 vehicles. And you've got a range of sort of chassis to choose from. So you've got bikes and trikes and cars and sports cars and trucks and buses, and then bigger stuff like monster trucks, all the way up to tanks and helicopters, which are only available to some of the teams. And obviously we got rules for the big rig, because you've got to have rules for the big rig.
Oh, of course, yeah.
So once you got a team and you've bought some weapons or upgrades, nitro boosters, that kind of stuff for it, then so let me talk through the basic structure of the game then. So the game's broken down into turns. Each turn has got 6 gear phases, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and in each of those gear phases, any vehicle that's in that gear or higher is going to get to activate. So that means that cars that are moving faster or in higher gears are going to get to activate more times in the turn. But the higher gear you're in, the more limited your maneuver options become. So we've got these movement templates that we were talking about that you can print out. There's a range of those different kind of turns and straights and wiggles and this kind of stuff. And on each of those, there's a set of icons which tells you which gear you can be in and select that template. So if you're trying to do a sharp turn, you have to be in gear 1, 2, or 3. If you're in gear 4, 5, or 6, you're just moving too fast to select that maneuver. If you want to take the really long straight, you've got to be in gear 5 or 6. Any other gears, you're moving too slowly to take that maneuver. So as you speed up, you get to activate more, but the turns available to you go less and less. So you become more and more like a bullet heading towards a wall. So when it's your turn to activate, you're going to pick one of your cars, and then you look at the templates that are arrayed before you, and you've got to select one of them. If you touch a template, you have to use it. Woe betide somebody who touches a template they're not permitted to touch, because then the person to their left gets to choose the template.
That sounds a bit harsh.
You'll see this is kind of the flavor of Gaslands as it unfolds. So once you pick the template, you're going to pop that in front of your car. Eventually, you're going to end up moving your car to the other end of that. But before you pick up your car and move it, you get the option to roll some skid dice, which are the dice that I talked about with the custom faces on. Depending on the car's handling, you get to roll a number of those dice. More is better. And the results of those dice give you a bunch of options. So the basic one is the shift result, which allows you to change up or down a gear. If you do that, you're going to get to probably activate another time in the turn, but you're also going to pick up a hazard token, and hazard tokens become really important as you go along. So you can shift up as many times as you like, as many times as you've got shift results on your dice to spend. And if you get a spin result, which is a kind of useful result to roll, then that will allow you to, once you move to the end of the template, you can pivot your car. So it's not 100% geometric like X-Wing is. You can tweak the direction of your car, the facing of your car, to sort of line yourself up for your next activation. Unfortunately, that's going to give you a hazard token as well. There's a hazard icon that just straight up gives you a hazard token. And then there's a slide icon that I'll talk about in a minute. But the shift icons, the other thing you can do with them is you can cancel dice results you don't like. So if you roll a bunch of spins and a couple of shifts, then you can cancel out the things that you don't want. And the other thing you do is shifts, you can get rid of these hazard tokens, because the hazard tokens are a problem. If you get 6 hazard tokens at any time, then at the end of any player's activation, if any car has got 6 hazard tokens on their car, then they're going to wipe out, which is pretty much bad news, because you drop all the way down to gear 1, and the player to your left of you gets to point your car, spin it on the spot to point in any direction. So you're probably going to lose the rest of your activations and be pointed off the table or into a wall or something, depending on the character of your gaming partners.
Okay, cool. Right. So
the other result is the slide result, which when you look at the movement templates in the book, or if you have a look at the download from the website, there's an extra template called slide, which is like the width of a car and sort of squarish, and it's got a little arrow pointing out of it. And each of the movement templates has got a little corresponding notch in it. So on the turn template, for example, that notch is on the outside of the turn, about in the middle. And if you roll a slide result and you don't cancel it, then unfortunately you're going to have to change the position of where you end up. So you're going to plug that slide template using the little notch into the sort of edge of the template. And now instead of ending up where you expected at the end of the turn, you're going to sort of slip sideways out of the turn, screaming off to the side. And obviously you're going to pick up a hazard token for that as well. Now that could be bad news. It could be that that's going to smash you into a barricade, or that's going to smash you into another car. But actually, as you kind of get to figure out the game, you'll figure out that actually sometimes that's super good, and you can sort of side slip round an obstacle or round another car that you were gonna, or you can get a line of sight on someone that you want to shoot. So the skid dice are what makes the movement templates not feel super geometric and mathematical and like car chess. They make everything a little bit more fluid and cinematic, and start to build some of the like visuals of like this car like kind of skidded out to the side, or pulled a handbrake turn, or rolled sideways.
Yeah, no, I thought that struck me. That's just a really nice little mechanic. You know, in some ways, as you say, it can be a hazard especially if you've got a particular type of manoeuvring space, but you can certainly see how you can make that work to your advantage, and just pull some actually really cool looking manoeuvres. I was really impressed with that.
So it ends up being this little mini game in the middle of your activation where you've selected your template, you haven't yet touched your car, and you roll all these dice, and then you're trying to figure out how to spend the shifts. Like, am I going to cancel dice results? Am I going to clear down some of my hazards? Am I just going to go for it and shift up and go crazy and collect some hazards, and damn be the consequences? So there's this really nice kind of risk reward moment in the middle. And it seems to be the case that pretty much everyone on their first time round a Gaslands track will just like slam it into 5th gear straight away, pick up a bunch of hazards. Somebody will make a mistake. They'll be like slewing across the track. Then people will start colliding into them. And when you collide into somebody, everybody who's involved in the collision gets 2 hazard tokens, and everybody's wiping out and causing other kinds of carnage. And then as you get more familiar with it, you realize, actually, maybe I can just go a little bit more gently. I only really need to get one shift up in the first gear phase in order to get an activation in the second gear phase, and then I only need to get one more shift in the second activation to get a third, and so on. So you can kind of be a little bit more tactical and or you can just go crazy and crash into everyone. That's also fine. But that dice mechanic plus the fact that you're balancing these hazard tokens has this nice kind of resource management / risk reward thing in the middle of your activation, which I really like.
Cool.
Right.
Now,
it does sound very interesting and fun, doesn't it?
Yeah. Now, obviously,
so shooting.
I was going to say, obviously, it wouldn't be a post-apocalyptic, futuristic car game without the fact that everything has weapons.
That's easy
on
for
it.
you to say.
Exactly. I'll be honest with you, the combat is relatively fast and simple because the focus of the game is the super cool driving and cinematic maneuvers. So you're going to take the movement template, the straight movement template, and you're going to use that as a shooting stick. So I touch my car with the the long straight movement template. And if I can touch another car, then it's in range and it's in line of sight. Weapons have a number of D6, which are their attack dice. You just roll the number of D6, so like a machine gun does 2D6, a flamethrower does, I can't remember the number off the top of my head, like 66, something like that. And then you're just looking for 4, 5, 6 is going to do a damage. And if you roll a 6, that's a double damage. And then the other guy gets to roll a number of dice, evade dice equal to the current gear they're in. So the faster you're moving, the more evade dice you're going to get. Any 6s on those evade dice is going to cancel one of the hits. Anything that goes through, you just check off the hull points on your car's dashboard. So yeah, pretty simplistic shooting. Wanted to keep the focus on the driving.
Okay, so from what you've been saying, to me, this sounds perfect for campaigns. So is there anything in there about sort of driver expertise? Can drivers sort of learn skills that affect how they drive in some way, or is it all about sort of pimping up the vehicle and the driver is basically just a passenger?
Yeah, this is a really interesting topic. I worked on the campaign system for ages and rewrote it so many times. I think I mentioned at the beginning, like Necromunda was a big early game for me, and in some respects Necromunda is kind of the defining for me way that campaign systems work, but in another way it's kind of rubbish and doesn't really work, and quite often people get discouraged from playing later in the campaign because somebody kind of runs away with it's that sort of runaway leader problem where the person who gets the early successes gets more skills and therefore is better at doing things, and so gets more later successes, and so one person just gets all the experience and the other guys get left behind. So I ummed and ahed for ages, and in the book, in terms of a progression system, although if you buy a copy of December's Miniature War Games magazine, there is a full sort of progression system and campaign system in there that you can get. So I recommend picking up a copy of Miniature War Games. The rulebook itself just has 2 simple ways to play linked games. One is you play for championship points. So essentially almost like an F1 season, you play games where the winner gets the most points and runners-up get less points, and you play to see who wins over the games. And then the other thing is that I recommend a progression system where you just bump up the number of cans equally for all players each game. So you start with like 30 and then you get 50, 70, 90, whatever, so that everybody gets a chance to kind of level up at the same level. The other thing that's coming actually in terms of campaign play whilst we're on this is it had to get cut from the book, unfortunately, because we ran out of pages. But there's like a branching narrative campaign with a set of linked scenarios where one player has a war rig and a small team, and the other players all play the raiders, trying to bring the war rig down over 4 scenarios. That's going to be coming out hopefully as a PDF from Osprey later, after maybe 3 months after the book is out. Yeah, all of that's to say, like, I thought about the campaign system so much, and I didn't want it to be that thing like Blood Bowl or Necromunda where, because of the campaign system, people stop playing the game instead of playing more of the game. I don't know if that's an experience you guys have ever had.
I kind of know where you're coming from.
It's really very common in club campaigns. It's kind of unavoidable. It's unless you have a very, very clever campaign design, you have to just work around this whole idea of, and now X is at the top of the ladder, which means they are getting Y amount of reputation points, which they spend on making their force even harder to kill. Yay!
Yeah.
Mostly why I prefer narrative campaigns.
So that's looking at campaigns as such.
So I guess actually, sorry to interrupt, I guess I didn't actually answer your question. Your question was, can drivers get skills? And the answer is yes, they definitely can. So one of the other things that I dislike about the kind of experience gathering, pimp your guys up over a number of games things, is that so much of the flavorful skills that make your, or upgrades that make your character into the thing that you imagined when you converted the miniature up to be that character are locked away for a couple of games. And even in Necromunda, like, you've got your heavy at the back with his massive artillery piece, and he just randomly rolls up a weapon skill upgrade for no reason anyone can discern. So what I wanted to do was make the skills just available from the first game onwards. So they're just there. You select which sponsor you want to be sponsored by, and that unlocks some lists of skills, and those things just cost you cans. And if you want to buy 2 cars and trick them up with loads of driver skills to make those drivers really awesome, then you can do that, or you can just buy a load of ramshackle cars and just fit cheapo machine guns on them and not worry about the perks. So that stuff is there, but it's there right from the beginning. It doesn't, it's not locked off in a campaign system. It's just there for you to mess around with and see where all the fun combos and flavorful stuff is.
Yeah, I guess the thing with pimping up drivers, and making them, the Lewis Hamilton of the car world is given a violent background and drivers can die. I'm kind of guessing. So, I'm presuming that you can have injuries to drivers as in the same way you can have sort of crashes which can affect the cars. So is any of that sort of carried forward?
So again, not in the base game. The base game is pretty much assemble your team, race or skirmish until everybody is dead or somebody's won the race, and then move on to the next one, either with more cans to spend or just with points in the bank for who's going to win the championship. If you download the if you buy the Miniature War Games December edition, then there are rules in that for your vehicles picking up damage and what you can do about that, and you can have a chance of drivers dying. But I mean, again, I wrote a bunch of different versions of this and we play tested it out, and it just wasn't as fun to have that stuff over a number of games as to not have that stuff. And also the page count in a Osprey rulebook is kind of slim, so something had to give. But yeah, so I mean, I hope that people are going to play the game in narrative fashion or in a sort of escalation league and find that it's fun enough that although all that stuff feels like it should be there, it doesn't actually need to be there, and it doesn't make the game more fun to have it there. It just makes the game more complicated.
Yeah, no, I can see that.
So, the game, as it stands, has a number of scenarios, yeah?
Yeah, you've got, in the book, you've got 6 scenarios. One is the death race one that I've kind of alluded to, where you basically just set up pairs of scatter terrain and they operate as gates. So you'd set up like 4 gates, and one would be the starting line, and you just the aim of the game is to drive through the gates in order in the correct direction, and the first person to do that with a vehicle is the winner of the race. But there's some other scenarios. So there's one which is Arena of Death, which is basically a straight up skirmish. Everybody needs to die kind of a game, but with automated gun turrets mixing into the proceedings. There's a cool one called Saturday Night Live, which is it's a skirmish, but you are incentivized to pull off mad stunts or ridiculous activities to pick up audience votes, and it's basically the first person to get a number of audience votes wins, where blowing stuff up will get you audience votes, but quite often other things are needed to impress the crowd. There's one called Zombie Bash, which is basically just running over a bunch of, well, if you have a copy of Zombies triple exclamation mark, that's exactly what you're running over. And then there's a Capture the Flag game, which is basically try and grab the other guy's flag and drive off the board with it. And then the last one is Monster Truck Smash, which is one player forfeits their team in favor of a grandmother from the audience getting into a monster truck, and that person has to try and run over as many of the other cars as possible, squashing them in order to win.
I have to ask, how many points for a zombie?
I think it's just most zombies wins.
It just seemed an appropriate question. Okay, so they're the 6 scenarios that come as standard in the game, and obviously you already hinted the fact that there's this further linked set of scenarios concerning a certain big rig. So as well as the basics, you've also got some advanced rules in there, haven't you?
Yeah, so like up to that point, when you've got the basic rules, the driving, the attacking, the building a vehicle, and the scenarios, at that point, like, you're kind of done if you wanted just to use the basic game, like everything's playable and complete up to that point. And then if you want to use the perks, which are the sort of driver skill upgrades, if you want to use the sponsors, which are, so the sponsors are like legendary drivers, winners of previous Gaslands seasons, and due to their ascendancy, they have obviously attracted a lot of sponsorship revenue, and each of them won Gaslands with a particular kind of style. And so like Rutherford is all about military hardware and tanks and shooting off lots of weapons with ammunition counts and explosions, whereas Miyazaki is all about, she runs a courier company in Tokyo, in the ruins of Tokyo, probably, but almost certainly not delivering secret munitions to the Earth resistance. But she's all about trick driving and like really, really skilled drivers who can get out of any situation and dodge about. And so each of the sponsors, there are 6 of them, have a different style of play, and the perks that they unlock for their drivers kind of emphasize that style of play. And then another advanced rule is the audience vote mechanic, which is something that the sponsors kind of lock into. So one of my design goals for Gaslands was to make it so that a player never got knocked out, because in a multiplayer game, obviously you don't want people just, turn 3 kind of sitting about, not having anything to do, just checking their phone or wandering off or whatever. So the goal I set myself was, well, how do you never have a player knocked out? And the audience votes is basically how that works. It's sort of a catch-up mechanic where, as bad things happen to you, like you lose cars or you people are streaming ahead of you in the race, then you get these audience votes, and you can spend those on like getting rid of hazard tokens, shifting up gear, all the way up to if you've got 3 of these audience votes, you can trade those in to respawn a car if you've got nothing on the table. So that means you can get back in the game. And then each of the sponsors will give you a specific condition to generate audience votes. So if you're playing as a Miyazaki team, then fans want to see on the television super stunt trick driving, and if you pull off a series of maneuvers, then you're going to get audience votes for that. So the sponsors and the audience votes kind of hook into each other to try and inspire players to push off in a specific direction and get rewarded for playing to that. And then the other advanced rules are the war rigs, because as we were playtesting it, war rigs are just super hefty and they're much longer than other vehicles, and you really want them to be just steamrollering cars out of the way with them flying up in the air everywhere. So they got a bunch of specific rules to try and make them feel right on the tabletop. But yeah, that's pretty much it.
So how long did it actually take you to put all this together then?
2 years, I think it is now. I guess it was a little bit less because then I had to turn the manuscript in. But then since I turned the rules in, I've kind of been working on all the other stuff, all the extra rules that are going to come out later. And
so basically everything that couldn't get in under the page count for the actual Osprey War Games book. Yeah,
exactly.
I have to say, you've missed one rule that does make me giggle, which is the rule of carnage.
Oh yeah.
You want to
read it?
That?
Well, do you want to read it?
In Gaslands, if a rule is unclear, choose whichever option results in the most carnage for all concerned. This is the rule of carnage. I think that pretty much sums up the design philosophy, doesn't it?
That sounds pretty decent. But basically, the bottom line is, what's the worst that can happen? Yep, he does.
Yes. Make it happen.
Yeah. Cool.
I have a friend and collaborator in the later stage of this game called Glenn, who used to be a tournament Warhammer player, a super tactical, and he's responsible for putting a lot of the lovely synergies and tactical kind of rewards into the perk and sponsor systems, because I'm kind of an idiot and I just want to watch things explode and fly across the table. So I've designed a game where mostly things explode and fly across the table, and he has put in some tactical acumen pegged into the middle of it there. So I'm hoping there's something there for both kinds of gamers.
Cool. Now, we took you do have some afterthoughts in the book, and I mean, we talked a lot about the setting of this and its kind of post-apocalyptic roots, and we've also talked about various other games that have cropped up from time to time. Many of which, especially those sci-fi games or near future games, appear to have vehicles in them for especially like post-apocalyptic games. You say bikes and buggies and various other bits and pieces. So although you've been talking about Hot Wheels cars, toy car sort of stuff, is it possible to play Gaslands with if you happen to have a 28mm vehicle collection for some unknown reason? Is it possible to play Gaslands with that, or are you limited in what you can do?
Yeah, it's actually really easy. So the templates are designed for Hot Wheels, which is roughly 20mm, whatever. So actually, if you just take the templates as they are and you photocopy them up to A3 from their kind of A4 size, if you like, if you just scale them up to that, they're pretty much perfect for 28mm. You'll probably need to pay on a 6x4 or an 8x4, but that's going to work fine. And likewise, if you want to go down a scale to 10mm or kind of micro machine scale, just go from the A4 scale of the templates now down to an A5, and it works fine as well. Everything else works exactly the same. It's because the shooting is managed with the movement templates acting as a shooting stick, that everything just kind of slots together if you just change the scale of the templates like that.
That's really clever, actually. I like that. Yeah. I say, because there is that one thing, especially when you have games that use movement templates, it is always the issue of, well, hang on, how do they scale?
Yeah, so you just download the version off of the Gaslands.com website, which is just like a single A4 sheet of paper, and then you can just scale it from there.
That's really clever. I like that.
You don't happen to have a whole bunch of 28mm vehicles by any chance, do you, Neil?
Possibly comment.
Yeah. I may have to go and raid James's toy collection and bring this along to the club, I think.
I was just going to say, Neil possibly has got 28mm car collection, but he doesn't know where they are.
Probably that suspicious bulge in his bedroom ceiling.
I have a sneaking suspicion. I did at one point actually have quite a few 143rd cars that I bought from like as street scatter for modern war games. I have this sneaking suspicion I might have thrown them away. Not very long ago either. Not very.
Disappointing.
So, Mike, all this sounds pretty cool. When can we get Gaslands? When's it actually coming out?
So Amazon tells me that it's available from November 30th. So November 30th, your preferred bricks and mortar retailer or your online retailer of choice. It's going to be the standard Blue Book Osprey War game, so it's $11.99 cover price. And then if you want to get involved early and or with shinies, then you can head to gaslands.com and check out our store where I'm offering a discounted bundle with the templates, the dice, some tokens for the ammo and hazards and so on. And I've got a cardboard box filled with copies of the rulebook. I'm going to sign those and include those in the bundle as well.
Those templates and stuff and shinies do look very nice. You gotta have accessories.
Yes, I mean gamers love accessories, man.
I fully understand. Put this out on thick paper or stick it to a serial card, but nothing beats a bit of laser cut acrylic.
Does that make us perverts? I'm not sure.
Especially when it's only 44 quid for the whole lot on pre-order. I mean, what's not to like?
That's pretty nice. Pretty nice. Yes, we'll put a link in the show notes. Okay, go and have a drool and go and have a drool.
Thank you.
And, yes, as you say, it does seem ironic that the templates are by far the most expensive thing because the models are only kind of a couple of quid each. Oh yeah.
Don't forget the T-shirt.
Yes.
Which can I point out? There's a slight error in the T-shirt. You don't appear to have catered for Wargamer Large.
No, we sold out already.
Well, there you go.
Maybe I need to order some more up.
Right. So, okay. So that's Gaslands. So, given the fact that you design a set of rules every month, have you got anything else? Now you kind of know how publishing works. Have you got anything else in the pipeline, or what's your plans moving forward from this point?
to be honest, I'm not going to try and get anything sold in the immediate future. I want to give all of my love to my firstborn son here, and just keep putting little bits and bobs out over the next at least year, probably two, to keep people interested in the game and try and make it a success. I don't have, because I'm not I don't have a team or a company around me who are going to fight for this game to be a success for me. So I just got to do all that work myself. Going to keep plugging on social media, keep trying to put out little expansions, mini scenarios, keep the FAQ up to date, just try and stay on top of keeping people interested in the game. Yeah, and writing blog posts and making sure that people feel like it's not like a fire and forget thing, but it's a living game.
So basically, next 12 months is pretty much full on Gaslands then.
Yes, sir.
Hopefully, more scenarios, more stuff like that. Loads of things.
Absolutely, yeah. We got a ton of notes that are currently in playtesting at the moment for all kinds of different expansions. Like one of the obvious options, obviously alongside new scenarios and ways to play, is adding some more sponsors so that you get some kind of different flavors of teams that you can play. I'd like to see a piratey kind of boarding action faction. We've got some possible rules for like playing the iconic Gaslands drivers of the past. So there's lots of stuff in the pipeline that hopefully we'll see either printed in some of the UK magazines initially, but eventually all available via PDF on the Gaslands website. And if I can convince the guys at Osprey to put that stuff out via PDF on the Osprey website, hopefully they can do that.
Cool.
As well.
The other thing I was noting, having had a little hop around the Gaslands.com, quick plug, Gaslands.com, remember the name? You do seem to do something that I actually love, which is think out loud about game design. Is that just sort of a side effect of being incapable of not designing games whenever you're bored?
Partly, it's also... You're exactly right. It's thinking out loud. It's like this was my first. Like I was transforming from being a enthusiastic hobbyist of game design to being somebody that I guess you would call professional. Although that is, yeah, I'm not going to quit the day job. But as a professional games designer, I wanted to explore what that actually meant, and I wanted to sort of piece together how I was thinking about the problems and how I was approaching them. And so, yeah, I just thought, well, let me go ahead and just try and explain the thought processes. And also, it's nice because then when somebody goes, wow, why doesn't this have a progressional campaign system? Then I can point them to the two articles where I'm kind of internally debating whether or not a progressional campaign system with rewards for success is appropriate or not. So that's a kind of nice side effect of it as well. Yeah,
it's very cool. I need to I haven't had time to read all of these, but there's some really nice... some of the thoughts on fluff I find quite interesting, particularly. The idea that... What was it your editor said to you?
Well, so you might have played or indeed read Frostgrave. And one of the things that they achieve in Frostgrave is they sort of evoke an entire world in like 300 words, and that's it. There's no other... I mean, obviously there's novels and stuff, but that was all they had to begin with. And so that's what Phil said to me, like, you got to convey the entire background in 300 words. So I was like, what? How is that possible? But of course it is. And then you end up finding other words elsewhere, and you're like, inside the description of the skills, you're putting some fluff in, and inside the captions of the photographs, you're starting to suggest more of the world. And it's kind of an interesting, like constraint sort of breeds creativity, and it was a cool thing to have to fight against.
Essentially, your fluff is page 4 of the rulebook. End of story, isn't it? And
that's it. That's the whole thing.
Photo captions, and I guess when you're starting advanced rules for sponsors and things, you sort of just sneak little bits of fluff in there when no one's looking.
Yeah. They forgot to edit that out.
Love it. I have to say, I think, having just realised that our club is down a shorter participation game for next week, I may have to bring this along.
Interesting.
Perfect, thank you.
Moving on, slightly interesting, and perhaps the conjunction. I know we talked about Hot Wheels cars. Given the fact that one of our number is a fan of 3D printing, have you thought about potentially looking at that sort of direction as something else to support the game, and actually start looking at vehicle conversions and stuff.
Have your people call my people.
Well, indeed. I know where my skills lie, and 3D modelling is not where they are. There's a host of really great existing suppliers for bits and bobs for converting up cars in 20 mils. And if you hit up the Gaslands Facebook group, or if you hit up the Gaslands forums on the website, there's plenty of discussion and links to fantastic suppliers for that stuff. In terms of like an official Gaslands range, that would certainly be interesting. Because I'm running this out of my shed, I'm a little bit cautious about how much shiny I offer, because I sort of don't want to become a mail order house for the rest of my life. But maybe that is just impossible to avoid at this point.
For those short of ideas, with a 3D printer, typing Mad Max into Thingiverse does actually produce some quite nice designs that might be usable.
Ooh. Perhaps I can send templates your way, Mike, in exchange for test prints, shall we say?
Could be arranged.
Mike, it's been great to chat. Thank you so much for coming on talking about Gaslands. It looks a lot of fun, it has to be said.
It does.
I was really hoping that the next Mad Max movie, which I'm sure is coming soon, was going to be out in 2018 to support my game's launch, but alas, it was not to be. If George Miller could just arrange that, that'd be great. Thanks.
So as we said, releasing at the end of November, are you likely to be touring games around the shows, or is that not something you've got? Is that not somewhere you've got to at this point in time, as far as plans are concerned?
Come to heroin.
No, absolutely. So we're going to try and hit up some of the bigger shows, and we're going to try and run a sort of a tour first 3 months of the year, playing some shops and some smaller shows. I mean, we had an absolute killer time at Salute last year, and we're certainly going to try and get back. But we had a table, but Mike here had just had a daughter like 3 months earlier and was too sleepy to remember the big poster that said Gaslands that would tell people that Gaslands was there. So we had a full demo table all day, but people didn't know exactly where we were.
Occupational hazard of a small child, yes.
But anyway, yeah. So we will certainly be doing more shows in the next 12 months, just trying to get the word out, get people, because I think once people play it and they see how quick it is to pick up and how easy it is to play with younger gamers and how easy it is to play as a big group and how easy it is to play under the influence. I'm hoping people are going to want to pick up a copy because it's inexpensive to get involved, and then it's kind of, it's your beer and pretzels kind of go to if you've got an odd player on a game night, or you just want to play something that's a little bit faster and sillier.
Sounds really cool, mate. Well, so we wish you all the very best with it. Look forward to seeing what other mayhem you can create for us in the Gaslands universe over the coming months. So lovely to talk. Thanks for coming on, and hopefully we'll catch up with you at shows in the new year, and we'll get a game together. That'll be good.
Yeah, hopefully.
Thank you. Take care, mate.
Thanks for having me on, guys.
We hope that you're enjoying this episode of the Meeples and Miniatures podcast. If you are, would you like to support us? There's a couple of ways of doing so. You can become a patron of the show by supporting us on our Patreon page. There you can give regularly every time we produce a show. Alternatively, you may want to give a one-off donation, and you can do that by using PayPal. For more details on both these options, please click on the Donate tab on our website, www.meeplesandminiatures.co.uk.
It's really nice, when you wind up talking to someone and realising that the final outlay for the game they've just enthused you about is a quick trip to Tesco's.
Yes, so I must admit, I've never really been into car games, but I'm sat here thinking, I've got an awful lot of Judge Dredd stuff.
Oh, dear Lord.
Oh, really?
I've got Pat Wagons, I've got the Judge I think they're called banshees, which is like speeder cars. I've got biker gangs. I've got judges on bikes.
It's just scale them up to 28 mil and away you go.
Yep. I've got a moped, which is like a great big RV, which is like a foot long.
It's a big rig.
It's a big rig.
It's a freaking huge rig.
Yeah. And I got civilians and things, and yes, this yes, I think a purchase for the rules and the counters is definitely going to have to be made.
Yeah. That will work really, really well. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, suspect you can wander into Poundland and kick yourself out for the game quite happily as well.
Yeah, that's it.
I'm just wondering if I've still got my Gorka Walker stuff. Is Gorka Walker still in the loft? I wonder. But
slowly decomposing.
Brave it and find out.
Yeah. What is the half-life of plastic from the early 80s?
Indeed.
Excellent question.
Yes.
Well presented.
Yes, but failing that, yeah. Oh, yeah. No, that looks. It just looks like a fun little game, and especially,
It does, doesn't it?
yeah, and especially with the fact of you going to go right. Okay, half a dozen of you, 8 of you, 10 of you, sort of thing. Okay, off you go, and especially with the way it's presented, as I say, if anyone's seen the Jason Statham version of Death Race.
No. There's only one version of Death Race, and it's probably Stallone's finest movie.
Yes, indeed.
Right.
Yeah,
I don't know. I don't know if I've ever seen the original Death Race. I'm trying to think. I'm trying to think of it. I mean, I've seen have I ever? I can't remember. If I had, it was a long time ago. I can't remember. It is a classic. I mean, I've seen clips from it, but I'm just trying to think if I've ever seen the full film.
Oh, it's a fantastic film. It's so bad, it's really good.
Yeah. So yes, it's yes. Looks to be an excellent little set of rules with a surprising amount in there. There's a lot of stuff to be going at, and as I say, it sounds like he's already got. It sounds like he's already got, a lot of extra stuff. I mean, obviously, with the stuff he's got coming out in Miniature War Games magazine and the stuff he's hoping to put on the website and various other bits and pieces. There's going to be a lot of extra support for it. So it should be cool.
Very good.
Well then, is that it?
Are we done?
I think it might be.
Cool. Well, in that case, then, I think all that's left to be said is thank you to you chaps for joining me for the evening. Thank you to our resident troubadour.
He just lost his mute button. You're very welcome.
And we just lost Neil.
If we ever had him in the first place.
Yeah. Trying to get him back.
Get him back. Bring us a Neil. My kingdom for a Neil. Ooh, that's interesting.
Do you reckon he's pressed the wrong button?
Your VoIP connection to Meeples Miniatures has failed retrying. Who knows?
We could actually finish the podcast here.
That would be stunningly evil.
It would be, wouldn't it?
It would be very, very funny. He'd hate us for it.
You would.
I tell you what you could do. Given that our recordings will get uploaded, you see, we can actually talk about close off the podcast and leave you with something to edit afterwards. So, in the absence of Neil,
Yeah, I think it's up to us to say goodbye.
I think it's us to it. So, bye-bye and roll good dice.
No, Mike, there's only one way that we can say goodbye when it's just the two of us.
And it's good night from me.
And it's good night from him. Good night.
Good night. Roll good dice.
Meanwhile, on the other channel... Ooh. You still there, Mike? And at this point, the VoIP connection on Zencastr appeared to fail, which was a bit of a shame. Never mind. So, cut off in their prime. Just in case we don't get them back, I'd just like to say thank you one and all for listening. Thank you to the Welsh Wizard for turning up. And until next time, take care. Happy gaming. And we shall talk to you soon. Thank you for listening to the Meeples and Miniatures podcast. If you've enjoyed the show, why not share it with others by leaving us a review on iTunes? And if you have any comments or questions, you can always email the show. The address is info@meeplesandminiatures.co.uk. And you can also visit our webpage, where you'll find a complete episode archive, all the View from the Veranda podcasts, rules reviews, and our blog of hobby items and news, which is updated several times a week. This is also where you'll find the links to our presence on social media, and here you can follow us on Twitter or join our Facebook group. And finally, here you can also find details should you wish to support us by making a donation to the podcast. All this on the Meeples and Miniatures website, www.meeplesandminiatures.co.uk. The Meeples and Miniatures podcast is licensed under a Creative Commons Attribution, Non-Commercial, No Derivatives 3.0 Unported license. Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you in a couple of weeks.